Good morning. On behalf of the Student Council and the Peer Leadership Council, I would like to welcome you to the 2021 Elgin Park Virtual Career Webinar. Today, I'm speaking on the shared traditional and unceded territory of the Katsi, Semiahmoo, and other Coast Salish peoples. To begin, my name is Ruth, and I'll be your coordinator for this session. We also have our wonderful PLC and Suko volunteers here as chat moderators and note takers. Before we start the program, I have a few reminders for you. First, please keep your microphones off and send all the questions for our speaker to the public chat. Our moderators, which is going to be me today, will ask them for you during Q&A. If you require any technical support, please direct message me. And third, as we are sharing Wi-Fi at our school, the network may be slow at times. So please minimize network traffic by turning off devices that are currently not in use. We appreciate your support and patience. Now I'll be passing the mic on to our student interviewer, Rihanna, who will introduce our honor speaker today.
Hey everyone, my name is Rihanna and I'm in grade 12. And as Ruth said, I'm going to be the interviewer today. So for the first session of this week, which we have full of amazing speakers, we're extremely honored and lucky to have Toby Gorman. He's going to speak to us about his career and experiences as a cinematographer in the movie industry. So Toby is originally from England. He's an award-winning cinematographer who has worked on a variety of films and TV shows. Some of those projects you all might be familiar with, Riverdale and The Good Doctor. And we're really excited to have him here today to share his story and journey. And so without further ado, please join me in welcoming Toby Gorman.
Hi guys. Right, I guess I'll get started. So my name's Toby Gorman. I am a cinematographer, or as it's more commonly known in the industry, a director of photography. I work on TV shows and movies, and my main role is to basically make a lot of the decisions involving the camera and the lighting in collaboration with the director, and basically shooting the production. My educational journey that led to this, that's a bit of a colourful path, which I don't need to bore you with completely, but I started out, I did an art degree. I actually started out doing fine art sculpture, which then led me on to do a master's in fine art. Personally, I wasn't that interested in a lot of sort of gallery-based work that was going on, because it didn't seem so relevant to me and my life and how I spent it. You know, I used to obviously, and still do, watch a lot of movies and TV, and that seemed like a more relevant sort of creative path for me. Towards the end of my master's degree, I started making more video-based work. And then as I finished my master's, I sort of naturally wanted to make more sort of dramatic video-based work. And so I started making short films and things like that, which sort of started me down the path towards where I am now. There's not really one path towards what I'm doing. Some people go to film school and sort of make a more sort of predictable journey towards the vocation. Myself, like I started after I left university, I actually started working as a graphic designer, which wasn't for me for various reasons. So I sort of left that, and then came to Vancouver on a whim. And then as it turned out, there was a big film industry here, and I started working in the film industry through a contact that I'd met making a short film over here. And I started way at the bottom of the ladder as a production assistant. And then after a little while, I hopped into the lighting department and worked in that for a number of years. And all the while I was shooting my own little short films and projects like that, and learning as much as I possibly could from the internet or from people I was working with. Then basically, as I was shooting these little short projects, I would start to get more sort of work actually as a cinematographer rather than as a lighting technician, which is how I was paying the bills at the time. And so they were like little commercial projects, you know, small commercials and short films. I might get paid a little bit here and there. And then they sort of basically grew. Each job would lead on to the next job, which was always a little bit bigger than the previous one. And then eventually I sort of got my first job shooting a feature-length project. There were a number of Punjabi movies. I was lucky enough to go to India and shoot some of those, as well as shooting those here in Vancouver. And that led on to my first job shooting a TV movie for a TV network. And then I did quite a lot of those. And then I started working more in serialized television shows and movies. My main passion remains movies. Like the TV shows are obviously, you know, getting very, very good these days. And, you know, there's lots to be said for what you can do with those. But at the same time, I guess my heart lies in sort of feature length drama productions. And so that's what I try and do more of. You know, yeah, so I sort of muddled my way that way, basically. And to, you know, to a point that people would trust me to shoot their projects. So here I am. Just looking, so I'll probably make my way through these suggested points here. So my favorite thing about cinematography and about my job, well, it's a very creative job. It's always different. One project is never the same as another. There's always many sort of different creative considerations that lead you towards the approach that you might take to shooting a film or a TV show. And it's always different. And so it's never like, okay, another day at the office. It's, you know, sometimes it can feel like that, but a lot of the time it's, you know, you can give it as much variety as you want to bring to it. It's a very, very collaborative job. The film industry in general is a very, very collaborative industry. You know, you work with 100 people every day. I remember the first job I got, I remember I worked on this TV show for 2 months, and I thought that's how that TV show was. And I remember being very surprised when I went to the next job, thinking that it would be different. And I was amazed that everything was the same. Sure, a lot of the people were different, but all the jobs were the same. The terminology people were using was the same, and sort of helped me realize that. You know, really is like a large industry, and the jobs within it are basically sort of divided in a way that you always know what you're supposed to be doing. Because when you show up to a set, you might be there just for one day, but you know what your role is, and everyone expects a certain, you know, thing from you, and it's basically always the same. So you can go from production to production to production, and there's a, you know, there's a structure that doesn't change, and so you know where your place is within that. And yeah, and generally you're you know, you've got to be good with people, because you're working with people all the time, and there might be different opinions and different sort of political sort of situations to tiptoe around. Yeah, so it's definitely a very sociable job, which I enjoy. Yeah, I enjoy collaborating with other creative people, and you know, there's lots of problem solving that has to happen. You never really have enough time and enough money, so you always have to find inventive ways to solve problems, and which can sometimes be more rewarding than if you had all the time and money in the world. Yeah, so that's there's sort of some aspects that I enjoy very much. My favorite cinematic piece that I've created is a tough one for different reasons, but I guess one of my favorite things, and it's not actually one of my favorite movies that I've made, but I did shoot a film called Cop and a Half 2. This is about 4 or 5 years ago, and my kids, who are 9 and 6 now, they must have watched that about 50 times. So to make something that my kids enjoy and laugh at and want to watch again and again has been very rewarding. That's definitely something I'd point to. Proud of my work on Riverdale. I did quite a bit on that, and you know, it's fun to work on such an established show with such a following, and I'm very, very pleased with what I was able to contribute to that show. So yeah, and then you know, amongst others, sometimes it's the smaller projects that actually you might get the most creative satisfaction from, because when you're working for you know, a TV network, there's many people that you have to listen to, many bosses that have all their opinions, and you have to sort of incorporate all of those and deliver what is going to make everyone happy. And sometimes it might be a smaller project that there's none of that, and you just get to completely flex your creative muscles, and sometimes they're the most, rewarding ones. I know a lot of my short films that I made for, $5, and that's some of my proudest moments in some ways. Now, is studying cinematography in post-secondary necessary to enter this field? Well, in short, no, it's not. But at the same time, it might well be the best route in there. I didn't obviously study cinematography in secondary education, but I'm very grateful for the art education that I had, and for the way that encouraged me to think and approach creative endeavors. So even though it wasn't directly related to cinematography, it was a very important stage of my life that really helped me develop to who I am today, I guess. And you'll if you're to speak to 10 cinematographers or 100 cinematographers, you'd probably get 100 different stories as to how they got there. For me, it was really all about getting stuck in as much as possible. I used to say I had a two-pronged approach, and one prong was working in film in a less creative role, like working as a lighting technician. You're running around, moving heavy lights and doing what you're told, but it's a great space to learn about how to do what you're doing, as well as to start thinking about why you're doing what you're doing. So that was one of my prongs, was working in the industry and getting more familiar with the workings of that. And then the other prong, which was just as important for me, was learning as much as I could. And the internet was an amazing resource for me, as far as there's so many articles and things that people have written that to teach you why you do what you need to do as a cinematographer. And so I just, even when I was working as a graphic designer, all I wanted to really be was a cinematographer, and I was spending my time learning how to do that and reading as much as I could. And now the film industry in general, I will say, is that I've always said that there's a job for everyone in the film industry, because in a way it feels like a microcosm of the world, because they need everyone. They need accountants, they need builders, they need painters, they need cameramen, they need lighting people, electricians, you name it, they need it. And so obviously, if you're going to be a film accountant, I'm sure you're going to need some post-secondary education in accountancy. And at the same time, if you're going to be maybe a set painter, which is a very creative job, some of the painting people do is amazing, but maybe there's less requirement to have gone through an academic program to get there. Having said that, there's obviously a huge amount of technical things to learn about that field as well. So generally a post-secondary education is not necessary, but I think it would stand you in much better stead to position yourself where you'd like to. Okay, one of the things I wish I'd known before entering into this field, or one of the main things, is that it's incredibly long hours, and the travel can also be really quite brutal. An average film day is 12 hours, and that doesn't count lunch, which is about 45 minutes to an hour. And it doesn't count travel, which might be, like for the last 2 years, I've been driving an hour to get to work and an hour to get back. So my day is a 15-hour day, just if I'm doing 12 hours. In the old days, shows would frequently do like 16-hour days, 17-hour days. Personally, I don't know how people do it. I used to do it, but thankfully these days, it's not quite so bad. And people are doing, productions are doing 12-hour days. Apparently it's a lot cheaper to do 12-hour days, because you can shoot the production quicker and spend less money renting the equipment over that time. But yeah, I didn't really realize what that means to your life. And so frequently it might mean that I say goodbye to my family on a Sunday night, and then I'm up early on a Monday morning and barely see them until Saturday morning. So it's it's very intensive from a time perspective, and that can impact life decisions. It's not necessarily a lifestyle that everyone's going to want to jump into, because it's very sort of all or nothing, which is unfortunate, because that's not necessarily a healthy way to live. Obviously, we do everything we can to make it as healthy as possible, eat well and rest as much as you can. But it's very intensive when it comes to time, and it can be very exhausting as well. And a long show, something like Riverdale, like they still shoot for 9 months. So you've ultimately got a 9-month, 60 taxing in that regard, and definitely something to bear in mind if you're considering a lifestyle that that you're going to enjoy. But I mean, I love what I do, so I'm fine with all of that. Having said all this, I've just got a job which is working with child actors. They're going to be 7 years old, and they can only work for 9.5 hours a day. So we're going to be doing shorter days, which is good. Yeah, definitely be warned about that. Now, what's next? So types of jobs that are in high demand in the film industry. Well, when it's busy in the film industry, which is when there's lots of movies and TV shows shooting in Vancouver, it's then everything becomes in high demand. I mean, when I first started in the film industry, it was so busy that with no experience, I just jumped straight into the lighting department and learned on my feet. Normally, it would have been like months and months of, you have to do tests. Well, I did do a test, and you have to do a certain amount on independent films before the union will let you work on union films. But the fact was, it was so busy that they were just taking who they could get in order to fill the roles. And it seems that so the electrical department, the lighting department is one that often needs a lot of personnel when it's busy. Same for the grip department, which also does a lot of the lighting, and they're responsible for moving the camera as well. Production assistants are always in high demand as well, because the bigger the show, the more of those you need, really, and especially when you're on location. Production assistants are responsible for making sure everyone knows where they're going and they're not going where they're not supposed to be, so it seems to be those roles that seem to be in high demand. It is harder to get roles like mine and camera operating, and ones that might be seen as a bit more sort of desirable, I guess, for some reason. Those are less high in demand because there's more people trying to do them and less jobs to get. Do I believe that creativity is necessary in cinematography? Yes, 100%. In many ways. Obviously the obvious way being, it's your vision, and you're responsible for getting the director's vision onto the screen, and so you're for one, you have to come up with very creative ways that you want to tell the story and how you want to do that. And then the other huge area of being creative as a cinematographer is coming up with solutions that because you don't have enough time or resources to do what might be your first plan. And you might have to shoot a very complicated scene in one day for one reason, or in half a day, or again, working with children, they're not allowed to be on set for so long, and so you have to work very fast, and you have to get a lot of shots in a small amount of time. So there's a creativity in devising plans in order to do that. So not only is it creative in a sort of broad strokes sense, you also have to be very creative and resourceful in your problem solving. So yes, definitely a very creative job in that regard. And my favorite piece of technology equipment that I use in my profession, it's funny, there's the since I've been in the film industry, which is like 15, 20 years, I've seen so many changes in technology, as all of you guys would have been witness to as well, when it comes to cameras and digital cameras and LED lighting and everything, and some of the things that we do nowadays feel like witchcraft compared to what we used to do. Everything's remote. Often like the camera operator isn't even touching the camera. They might be controlling that remotely, and focus is all controlled remotely, and lighting is often controlled remotely. Many new toys that sort of make our jobs a little easier. But I'd say maybe one of my favorite tools at the moment is actually an app which any budding filmmakers could download onto their iPhone, which is called Artemis, and it's a viewfinder app, and basically you can put into the app what camera you're shooting on, what lenses you're using, and it can show you what you will see through those lenses in that camera. And it's a great tool these days because there's many different shooting formats and different lenses, and it can get a bit confusing as to what you're going to see through the camera when you look through it. And an app like that has been very useful to not only sort of navigate that, but also everyone can see what you're looking at and what you're planning to do. And so once you've decided what you're going to shoot, you can look through the phone and people are seeing what you're going to do, and people are clear as to what you're doing and what they need to do in order to help facilitate that particular shot. So that's a useful modern tool. So yeah, that's me having buzzed through all of those questions there. Happy to answer any more. Or
Yeah, we actually have quite a few questions in the chat. So I'm just gonna ask as I see it on the chat. So the first one is, what was it like working with the cast of Riverdale?
I knew that would be a question. It was great. I worked on season 2, and it was great. Like KJ, the main guy, plays Archie. He was absolutely awesome. So often with stars like that have seen a lot of success, there often can be a little more prickly to deal with, but KJ was absolute legend, always making jokes, and just a really great down-to-earth guy. So big fan of him, and the same can be said for most of the others. I mean, some are definitely growing into their fame in a way that might be less palatable, let's say, but for the most part, they were all awesome, and it was a really fun experience.
Yeah, awesome to hear. The other question is, a lot of people in the industry have mentors. Did you have one, and do you think it's helpful to have one?
This is a very good question, and I never had a mentor, and to be honest, I would love one. I think it would be very, very helpful. It's someone that you can call up and ask questions about anything, whether it's technical or creative ones to do with the actual job you're doing, but also to help you navigate within the industry, because you do have to sort of negotiate your deals, and you're always sort of treading the line with production, because you don't want to spend more money than they have. At the same time, you need to be able to do what is required of you. So there's a line to tread there, and having someone that you can call about all of these things would be super, super helpful. And so I'd actually love a mentor even now, but I've never had one. But luckily enough, there's, as I say, it's a very sociable industry. So there's many people I can call to ask their opinions and get some advice and stuff. So, but yeah, mentors definitely would be a great thing to have.
Yeah, and can you speak a little bit about how you find your next project and what you deal with downtimes in the industry?
Well, I have an agent now, which is great, because they're much more sort of hands-on when it comes to finding my next project. So, and they also deal with like negotiating my contract and stuff. So that takes a bit of that weight off my shoulders, which is good. Yeah, I mean, it can be tricky. Like there's times, there's been busy times in the industry and there's been quiet times in the industry. And I know even like 2013, I don't know if anyone remembers, but you'd see like bumper stickers saying "Save BC Film" and signs everywhere, because 2013 was like a real slump. And I forget what the reason was, but there's various factors that affect how busy it gets here in Vancouver. A main one is the strength of the Canadian dollar against the US dollar. When the US dollar is stronger, it's much cheaper for US productions to shoot up here. So that gets them all coming up here and means there's more work. And then, various other factors as well. And it can be stressful at those times when there isn't much work to be had. And I know in 2013, a lot of people, and people still have like secondary jobs that they can do when it's quiet in the film industry. We've been lucky the last sort of 5 years or so, because it's been, other than COVID, of course, it's been very strong and hasn't really been a slump, which is great. But everyone's always kind of got half an eye open for when it is going to slump, and so the common wisdom is to not spend all your money as soon as you make it. You want to be sort of planning ahead and being sensible with that. Yeah, just a lot of us have our fingers crossed that enough work is going to come along that we can feed ourselves. You'll often hear the phrase feast or famine. It might be so busy and everyone's making more money than they ever thought they would, but then you know, it might be famine and all the work dries up and everyone's spent their money and you know they don't know what to do. So you know, you have got to manage your finances wisely, and bear in mind how much you're going to be working and how much you might not be working, and yeah, so there's no sort of guarantees anywhere. You just got to sort of do what you can, I guess. Which, you know, which some people don't like. You know, some people said, "Oh, I don't know how you can work like that." You know, not knowing when your next job is, and like, you know, I finished my previous job as a Disney show, which we finished at the end of March or mid-March, and literally didn't know when I'd be working again. And then it wasn't last week, the week before, I suddenly got the call for the job that I'm doing now, and then I was working 3 days later, and now I'm going to be working till the beginning of October. But you know, the week before last, I had no idea when I'd be working next. So you know, you have to have the stomach for that, I guess. You know, there's no guaranteed paycheck, and you know, and often you get to the end of a job, and like the end of my last job, I'm like, right, I'm not going to work for 3 months. I'm just going to kick back and relax. But give it 2 weeks, and then you're like, okay, I should probably find another job. So
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting point that you raised. Like, I didn't really think that, you know, to be a good cinematographer, you have to be able to be spontaneous and like take risk. And obviously that's like a huge part of what creativity is about. But like in terms of the workload and how your profession functions, that's actually a huge part. So yeah, I think a lot of the students attending the career classes might be really interested to hear that. So, and let me get more questions. Oh, there's actually a fun one. Um, what do you think of YouTubers making a living out of doing movie commentaries? And do you agree with them, or sometimes do you disagree with what they're saying about the film industry or certain movies?
I guess it depends how much. I mean, to be honest, I don't tend to watch a lot of YouTubers. I know that some that I've seen often are massively ill-informed, and but you know, everyone's entitled to an opinion, and if they're reviewing a movie, then of course, then great. You know, that's you know, they're made to be put out for the public to take as they will, and so you know, I have no problems with anyone reviewing movies or anything. But like I tell my kids with YouTube, you've got to take it with a big pinch of salt. I mean, there might be a lot of truth on there. People saying things that are worth listening to, but at the same time, we've got to sift through a lot that isn't necessarily true. Yeah, I don't spend a lot of my time watching YouTube videos, whether it's movie reviews or much else, to be honest. But I know that there's a huge amount of useful resource out there on YouTube. If I ever need to do anything, I can just type it into YouTube and there'll be some tutorial telling me how to do it. So that's awesome. But at the same time, you know, you've got to cross-reference this stuff. And especially, you know, there's so many, like when I started, there were no YouTube videos about how to shoot a video or anything, or how to use a camera. It was all, you know, much less around. So it's kind of amazing, a lot of these resources, but I do encourage cross-referencing. Don't just take the first video at face value. Some people might actually be completely and utterly wrong about what they're talking about, and at the same time they might be completely and utterly right. And obviously you develop trust for various YouTubers that, you know, well, this person knows what they're talking about, I'm always going to go to their YouTube page and see what they have to say because I trust this person, you know. So just like in life, you have to you know, evaluate the how useful or true input might be. And there's a whole lot of amazing information out there, but beware for the stuff that's not founded on, you know, truth.
Yeah, and they're like just that this industry is founded like upon like a variety of opinions. So basing off of that, how do you handle the differences of opinions on set?
Well, on set there's a hierarchy really, and so as you enter the film industry and into whichever department you're joining, like for example, when I joined the lighting department, we had to sit a test with the union, which had various lighting related questions, but some of the questions were, if you've got an opinion about lighting, should you volunteer that to the director of photography? And the answer is no, definitely not. So it's not a free-for-all of ideas. There's kind of a hierarchy of ideas, which ultimately stems from the director. Who's, and it's the director who's making the main decisions there. Obviously they're collaborating with many people and they're seeking their input and their guidance as well. So it's not like a director's telling everyone exactly what they need to do, but they are saying, this is what I would like to achieve. How can we do that? And so then you can come forth with your ideas as to how to do that. Sometimes it can feel like there's a few too many cooks in the kitchen, especially on a TV show where you might have the TV network as well as the local producers, and then there's the director, and so that there can be quite a lot of conflicting opinions and creative ideas, but you always really need to acknowledge that hierarchy and not not overstep your boundaries when it comes to that. When you're on a professional set, you can see this in action. It's really fascinating, because there might be 100 people there, might have all these different ideas, but they're certainly not going to walk up to the director and be like, we should do this or we should do that, because it's not going to go down well. So that's, but it is something you have to learn to navigate, and everyone's different. Some directors like to say exactly how it is, and some like to invite other people to come forth with their ideas. So there is a process of feeling out each relationship and each person is just and how they work, and then you can sort of place yourself in there as necessary. So that's another skill to learn, to be honest, is how to know when to keep your mouth shut and when to come forth with an idea. My philosophy is often, if people are doing great things and they're bringing what you're looking for, let them do that. And only when you're looking for something else, or they're not quite going down the road you want, do you say, do you bring it up and change that and guide that in a different direction? Everyone loves to be involved, and I believe that if people feel that their work is being noticed and valued, they're going to get a lot more out of it, and they're going to enjoy it a lot more, and you're going to get the best out of them, and you're going to make a product that you're most likely to be proud of. So as I say, like, collaboration is a huge thing in this industry, and learning to collaborate is as important as learning to do the technical and creative skill that you're doing. I've worked with, for example, camera operators that are amazing camera operators, but they are not good at collaborating, and unfortunately that doesn't work. So you need someone that's good at both. As far as getting the next job, being able to fit in with people, and it is a huge part of that, because people want to work with people they like working with, that feel that that support their ideas, and not with difficult people that they're on a different page to everyone else. So you might be the most creative mad genius in the world, but it's definitely going to be harder to work if you're like that. But that's not to discourage those creative mad geniuses, because I saw some of the best films that we've got because of those people. So, it's a bit of a balance.
Yeah, from you said, like, interpersonal skills is very, very important in the film industry.
Absolutely.
And we've actually got, I believe, let me see, a drama class, our Elgin Park drama class here today. And they want to ask, can Toby speak to his high school experience? What was he interested in when he was in high school? And which area was he inspired by?
Sure. So at high school, I was into many things at high school. I was into music as much as anything. So I was into music in quite a big way, making music and playing guitar and stuff. And from a as far as what I'm doing now, actually, no, hang on, let me go back. So I was painting and drawing was my thing ever since I was 6 or 7, and so I was kind of known as someone who could do that, and all the way through high school, before I'd really figured out what I wanted to actually do, I was doing a lot of painting and drawing, and which is ultimately why I ended up doing a sculpture degree because of sort of following that path. And it was only throughout in my degree that I discovered more about, you know, how I enjoyed making films. But at the same, having said that, I do remember my mum used to work for Bernardo's, which is a charity at the time when I was a teenager, and she had access to a VHS video camera. A lot of you may not even know what VHS is these days, but it's old school, big videotape. And so she had access to this huge camera, which is archaic by today's standards. But so me and some friends, I'd borrow this camera and we'd go and make stupid videos of us dressing up in ridiculous outfits and doing stupid comedy things. And I remember I used to do the titles, and stuff like that. And so at high school, I was really just playing around. You know, obviously there's less you know, pressure to take what you're interested in and make it useful, as you know, vocationally. And so yeah, it was kind of like a sandbox of playing around. You know, I loved making music, I loved making artwork, and I loved you know, making these videos when we could. So yeah, I mean, it's a great time to really explore without, you know, having to make a paycheck yet. So yeah, I would just use that time to, you know, explore as many creative ideas as you can, even if you don't know where they're going, even if you don't know why you're doing it. You know, if it makes sense to do it, do it. And it's probably going to be useful in some way, you know.
All right. Thank you so much for coming to talk to us, Toby. It was a really great presentation and I learned a lot. I'm sure our students did as well. I just wanted to say thanks, and I want to pass it back to Ruth, who's also our session coordinator. So she's gonna close up and say a few things before then.
If you enjoyed this event, please check out our Instagram, it's EPS Stuco and EPS_PLC_ for more events in the future. To all our teachers and volunteers who made this possible, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Once again, we would like to thank Toby, Mr. Gorman. Yep.
Well, thanks so much, guys. Take care, and yeah, see you.
Thank you.
Care.
See ya.